We've got some pretty dramatic footage coming out of a mugging that occurred at River of Life Christian Center in Atlanta, Georgia. Now this happened Saturday before 5:30 p.m. in broad daylight. They robbed a 79-year-old church deacon that was just cleaning outside the church when this man approached. Now the attacker came at the deacon, knocked him down, and took his wallet. And as you can see here, he started thumbing through the wallet right away. And again, that suspect forcibly removed the victim's wallet and contained cash and cards. Now, this is Christian Warrior Training. I welcome all my Christian warriors to come here to learn about church safety and how to protect yourselves. We talk about the crime like we just witnessed here, but we also talk about what you can do to protect yourself to make sure that you're not a victim of crime. And if you are, or your church or somebody at your church is a victim of crime, what you can do to protect yourself, just to make sure it doesn't happen in general. And a lot of this stuff can be avoided if we just keep our head up and look around. Now, the details of this case, we saw what happened, but it was such a forceful knock to the ground that the suspect gave the 79-year-old deacon that it threw off his glasses and his shoes came flying off. Think about how hard of a hit that was to a 79-year-old man in front of a church. Nonetheless, you would think at a church, you would be safe from attacks like this, but no. Now, despite the time of the day, there were a lot of witnesses. Now, 6 cars passed by at that particular moment with one driver stopping to report the incident to police. To that driver, if you're watching, thank you for stopping and for helping him. It is people like you that restores our faith in humanity. Thank you, I appreciate that. Now, look, I think this happened in a high crime neighborhood from what it looks like from reports and just looking at crime statistics. Now, if you're in a high crime area, you really do need to be a little bit more aware than somebody that is at a small church out in the rural area, out in the middle of nowhere. You really do got to keep your head on a swivel. Now, we're going to talk about how exactly to do that with situational awareness, but you can see there is surveillance footage that was captured of the incident. It's very clear. It's very important for your church to have a 4K video system, a burglar alarm, and a fire alarm to protect your church. Those 3 things are the most important things for security and safety of your church, yet hardly any churches actually have that. Now, as you can see, this 4K video camera was able to capture the suspect so that we can identify him. I can tell you right now, there's going to be a really good Atlanta cop that is going to recognize that guy from prior contacts. I know I would get these bulletins all the time and I'd be like, that looks like Joe. Let's go get him. And then we would find him with the victim's property and it would just be a great case. So having that 4K video system for law enforcement, it goes a long way. You would be amazed that only 1% of the population actually goes out and commit crimes. And those cops are intimately aware of that 1%. They know them by name. I used to be able to give you their middle names plus their dates of birth. It drove my wife crazy that I was able to remember all of that stuff, but I would have a hard time remembering other things that we needed around the house. Now look, there is a $2,000 reward for information leading to this guy's arrest through Crime Stoppers in Atlanta. Hopefully people don't really care about the money and just want to turn the guy in because he was at the Lord's house committing a crime. So let's talk about actionable steps that you can take. Now, number 1, you can practice situational awareness. All that means is that you're looking around constantly. Look, he's sweeping out front, just making it welcoming for people to come. But that just means that when you sweep, you're constantly looking around. Not paranoid, you're just looking around to make sure that there's nothing around that's gonna harm you. A car that is now gonna crash into your church or something like that, right? So just have that situational awareness, looking around constantly. When you see people coming up, start looking at them, right? I have a class over at christianwarriortraining.com that you can take that talks about looking at threats at your church. And one of them is identifying armed suspects. I like looking at my church. I think probably 30 to 40% of my church is armed at any given time. At church, we have a couple thousand people we probably have about over 1,000 people at our service. And what I like when everybody sits and they're waiting for everything to start, and all of a sudden the music starts and we're gonna start worship, is everybody stands. I see a full 10% do this. And what they're doing is they're pushing their gun up to kind of pull, because it's pulling their pants down. And now you can tell who's armed at your church, right? So looking at those signs, they'll constantly touch it. They'll just keep touching where the gun is to make sure it's secure. When you see that, danger's coming probably, so you should leave. I would talk to crime victims all the time, and it's very interesting talking to them. They would get robbed by somebody, and let's use this one as an example. It's an African-American man that beat up this elderly man and took his wallet. Race has nothing to do with it, but I'm going to use this as an example. They get robbed, and I would go up to them and say, did you detect danger at all before this happened? It was a very popular question I liked asking them, right? Or not say popular, but it was a question I like asking them all the time. And they would say, yeah, I didn't get a good feeling as he was approaching. They're coming like this at each other. And I'm like, well, what did you see that made you uncomfortable? And let's talk about this man. Well, he was really dirty and he was unkempt, and I could see a big bulge in his pocket. And I was concerned there might be a weapon there or something like that. He looked angry. His eyes were narrowed and he was staring at me. And I noticed he was staring at my purse. And my next question would be, okay, and race never came into this, but my next question would be, why didn't you go to the other side of the street to avoid coming across him? And they would say, I didn't want to look like a racist. But race had nothing to do with it. It was, he looked angry. He was disheveled and dirty. It looked like he might have had a weapon. He was staring at your purse. Race didn't come into any of that, but they didn't want to be perceived as racist because he was an African American. Like, I hear stuff like that all the time from crime victims. Now look, when that little voice in your head tells you danger is coming, listen. Don't rationalize it away and tuck it away in a box somewhere. No, you pull that thought out of the box, put it out front and center. Don't rationalize it. Just listen to it and do what you're told. I always like to tell people that voice talking to you, that telling you danger is there, is God telling you to move, and you're ignoring it. The human animal is the only animal on the planet that doesn't flee when it senses danger. You see deer run at the slightest sound. You see dogs, when they sense danger, they growl and they start backing up and moving out. We rationalize. Well, he's probably a nice man and I'm being a racist. No, that has nothing to do with it. So that situational awareness is super important, in listening to the voice in your head, super important. In a high crime area, number two, in a high crime area, you might want to use the buddy system. Now, if you're working outside, something like this can happen. So you might want to just have somebody come out with you and watch your back while you're concentrating on that. I'll give you an example. When I had cops on a car stop and they were out in the road and they were, whatever they had to do out in the road, that made me nervous, I literally would just stand and watch traffic. I would turn my back to them. I would turn completely around away from them and I would just watch traffic. And I would make sure that they're not going to get hit so I can turn around and say, run or whatever, right? Working that buddy system, I think it's super important, right? The other thing you want to do is secure your valuables. Now, look, all of my valuables, my wallet, my phone, and my keys are all in my front pockets. I keep them up front. I don't leave them behind, because people expect a wallet to be from behind. It's called pocket checking, where a criminal will come up, grab you, and just start rummaging through your pockets. I don't want them to get it, be readily available where they see it. And so they're looking in back pockets because that's where everybody puts their stuff. I put all my stuff up front, a little bit more comfortable. You just want to make sure, like, you don't have flashy jewelry. My wife and I, we love our wedding rings that we gave each other, but when we travel, we take those off. And we know we still love each other. It's okay. We have little replacement cheapo rings, and that is totally fine, right? You want to develop some kind of a response plan. Now, look, you want to train your church staff on how to respond if they witness a crime. So, number one, prioritize your safety. Make sure you find safety and immediately call 911 and let them know what is going on. We're at this church, this address. The deacon is 79. He's getting robbed by this guy, and give his description. And you want to encourage your congregation to report suspicious activity to your safety team and let them know what's going on. Another thing that works well in high crime areas is to have a community watch. It's really important for the church to lead this off. Go let the community meet in your church. They may not go to your church, but let everybody come in and hold community watch meetings so you're the center of safety. So everybody knows, number one, you have a great place for everybody to meet. You get to know your neighbors. Everybody starts looking out for each other, and it builds that sense of community. Now, I used to go to communities like this. I worked in something called community policing. And when I did that, I would go into a community, I would get everybody together. We all knew each other's first names, and we noticed that a sense of community built up where everybody wanted to protect each other. And that's what we want here. We want that spirit of community. Now, it's important to remember, the next thing we want to talk about is to remember not to live in fear, to just be alert and to look around. And a good verse is Nehemiah 4:9, but we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. I love Nehemiah 4:9. It is a really good verse that comes out and lets you know that it's okay to have a safety ministry and to protect your church. All right, 2 things I want you to do when you leave here. Number 1, I want you to pray unceasingly for the safety of your church, your family, and most importantly, this 79-year-old deacon of this church that got robbed. We know that it's going to bother him. He's going to be upset. He probably has some injuries. Let's just pray for his health and his safety. And also, let's pray for forgiveness for the perpetrator. And I know that's going to be hard to do. It's going to be hard to pray for forgiveness for him, but we have to pray for forgiveness and also pray that he finds the Lord, that he finds Jesus and he stops his life of crime and he turns it around and starts supporting his community. The second most important thing I want you to do is to remember your ABCs. Always be caring,